TV18.
Good evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Arundhati Ramnan and here are the headlines that we're tracking for you at this hour. Sensex and Nifty declined for the fifth straight session, marking the longest losing streak in 8 months. Sensex loses over 130 points. More than 7 lakh crore rupees in investor wealth has been wiped out in the last 5 sessions. Zee Entertainment moves NCLAT seeks a stay on insolvency proceedings after the NCLT admitted IndusInd Bank's plea. A statement from Puneet Goenka's office says he is taking all the necessary steps to protect the interests of stakeholders and achieve a timely completion of the Zee-Sony merger. Nirmala Sitharaman meets U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen ahead of the crucial G20 meet in Bengaluru, discussed their perspectives on strengthening multilateral development banks and global debt vulnerabilities. Yellen says U.S. will make it clear to Chinese government and companies that providing material support or assistance to Russia will be a very serious concern. Relief for former Jet Airways chairman Naresh Goyal and wife Anita. Bombay High Court quashes the February 2020 enforcement case information report against them in a money laundering case. The Goyals had moved the High Court seeking quashing of the ECIR. A Delhi court grants an interim bail to Congress spokesperson Pawan Khera after a direction from Supreme Court for a bond of 30,000 rupees. Khera was deplaned at the Delhi airport and arrested for his tweet against Prime Minister Modi. FIRs have been filed against him in Assam, Lucknow and Varanasi. The Apex Court also issued notices to Assam and UP police to club all of the FIRs. Reports of shelling in southern Donetsk in Ukraine ahead on the one-year anniversary of the Russia invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine claims to have repelled 90 Russian attacks over the past 24 hours. Those were the headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Now, a volatile day saw Dalal Street close the session flat. Markets fell for the fifth straight day, posting its biggest losing streak since June 2022. Nifty and Sensex failed to hold on to intraday gains to end mildly in the red. The broader markets fared slightly better than the blue chips. BSE companies have erased a market capitalization of over 7 lakh crore rupees in 5 sessions. For the series, Nifty lost 2% to record its biggest fall in a series since September. Surbhi Upadhyay is here with all of the day's trading action. Surbhi?
Well, this is a market that seems to be in no man's land. Nothing is moving it. The bulls will, however, see this as a sign of relief, considering the huge drubbing that we saw yesterday in trade. Today was a very cautious session right from the word go. The market was trading in a very narrow 120 to about 150 point trading band. We did have the monthly expiry played out, so there was some volatility around 3 o'clock, but net result is that we've closed at the flat line with absolutely no sense of direction whatsoever. The talking points continue to be the same, direction of interest rates and whether the RBI will hike again in April, what the Fed is doing, rising bond yields in India and obviously internationally, and that's really keeping a lid on momentum. Let me quickly come down to today's movers and shakers. So there was some shine in the metal side of the market, actually metals and commodities. So you had stocks like Hindalco, Tata Steel, a little bit of green on an ONGC for that matter during the course of the day. So some of these names were active. Then you had a couple of the banks that started to come back in towards the close of the session, and that prevented a wider fall. So names like Axis Bank, SBI, Kotak Mahindra Bank, they pretty much sort of held the floor for the market, if I could say that. And then there was, of course, the stock that has been the star of 2023 after being the star of 2022, and I'm talking about ITC. Lifetime highs today for the stock once again. It's inching closer to the 400 mark, and that gave some respite to the bulls. But then pressure on the other side. The trends are very unclear, and a lot of the heavier stocks like Reliance, HDFC Bank, they continue to see selling pressure today, and there was not much clarity. Broader markets, well, really it's extremely stock specific in terms of the action. For instance, a Sonata Software today, where the company's gone ahead and done an acquisition, that was in focus. Zee was in focus because of all the ongoings at the NCLT in the company, then challenging that at the NCLAT. Stock was down 15% at one point in time, but then closed with a cut of just about 3 to 4%. So it's extremely stock specific. There isn't a momentum play in this market. And for what it's worth, I mean, the market's really searching for triggers and a sense of direction that doesn't seem to be coming right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all those details, Surbi. Now, there's no respite for the Adani Group. 8 of the group's 10 listed entities ended the day in the red. Adani Total, Adani Green, Adani Transmission and Adani Power hit lower circuits over the course of the session. The group has lost market capitalization to the tune of 20,000 crore rupees today. This takes the total market cap losses since the Hindenburg report was released on the 24th of January to around 12 lakh crore rupees. As of today, the Adani Group's market capitalization stands at 7.4 lakh crore rupees. Now, Zee Entertainment has moved the NCLAT seeking a stay on insolvency proceedings. Yesterday, the NCLT, on the back of IndusInd Bank's plea, allowed initiation of insolvency proceedings against the media company. Lata Venkatesh joins us now with more details. Lata, what could this mean for the company's proposed merger with Sony, and what do legal experts have to say about this?
The company Zee Entertainment had no option but to go to NCLAT because the NCLT process has to be stopped. They have to get a stay. If the NCLT process runs, then the promoters and the management are taken off and the committee of creditors will take over the company, which obviously they don't want because they have to run the company and conduct the merger. Now, what are the chances that Zee will get a stay? The chances, according to legal sources, is good because the loan in dispute is not something that Zee has taken from IndusInd. Apparently, what Zee has done is, Zee is itself almost debt-free. It has given a comfort to IndusInd in a loan it has given to its old group company, City Network. And the loan, in technical language, arrangement is called Debt Service Reserve Account. And apparently, the comfort that Zee gave was that it will always ensure that in that account, 1 quarter's interest and principal is maintained. But then City Network became an NPA. It defaulted. And now IndusInd is asking Zee to pay up that money because it gave that comfort letter. It is seeing it as a guarantor. Zee has taken IndusInd to the Delhi High Court where it is fighting that case. So chances are Zee will tell NCLAT that this is actually a loan in dispute that IndusInd is trying to take from them, and therefore this NCLT petition should be quashed. Now, does NCLAT have the right? There are precedents that NCLAT can take such a view. The Supreme Court in the Vidarbha Industries case had said that NCLAT can, or for that matter even NCLT, can decide whether to admit a case or not on the merits of the case. And here Zee has a good chance of saying that this is a bad case in the first place. The other things that apparently Zee can bring forth is that the claim was made by IndusInd during COVID. And at that time, many of those cases were not allowed because of the COVID period. So the case is not even maintainable. Zee can also argue that when NCLT pronounced the judgment, it had not allowed Zee to make a case. It had only taken written submission, not entertained them in person, and therefore procedure was not followed. According to legal, Zee has a good chance of getting a stay, but until the stay comes, you can't be sure.
Right, Lata. Many thanks for those details. Now, Bengaluru is playing host to the first major G20 event under India's leadership. Finance ministers and central bank governors will get into a huddle and discuss several issues plaguing the global economy. My colleague Parikshit Luthra gets us the latest from Bengaluru. Parikshit?
The first major meeting under India's G20 presidency is taking place. During this finance track meeting, finance ministers and central bank governors from G20 nations are brainstorming on issues plaguing the global economy. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has held 10 bilateral meetings, including one with US Secretary for Treasury Janet Yellen. Yellen hit out at Russia in a press conference and said building support for Ukraine will be her #1 priority during the G20 meetings. She also urged China to agree to proposals on debt restructuring to help countries like Zambia and Sri Lanka. Listen in to what Janet Yellen had to say.
I will continue to push for all bilateral official creditors, including China, to participate in meaningful debt treatments for developing countries and emerging markets in distress. I will also be discussing international coordination on debt restructuring for middle-income countries. In emerging markets, financial conditions remain relatively tight, but have begun to show signs of easing. At the same time, we know that a number of vulnerable countries continue to face acute distress. We're not out of the woods yet. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity this week to continue our close communication with other major economies. We've worked with countries to avoid export restrictions and enable food to flow more freely, including through the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
The outgoing president of the World Bank, David Malpass, has said that the world needs to find an answer to inflation concerns. He also hoped that the G20 will come to an agreement on debt resolution for emerging economies. Listen in to what he told our managing editor, Shireen Bhan.
Reconciling the debts of the various players, that's been taking a long time within the debt restructuring process. So reconcile the debts, agree that what you're trying to do is have comparable treatment across the various creditors, and then find ways to resolve some of the barriers. On China, important is they are still including non-disclosure clauses in some of their contracts. That makes it very difficult to do the restructuring. They take collateral, which is not really necessary, and also escrow accounts. China itself can benefit from this. It's one of the biggest exporters, often the biggest to many parts of the world, and so it can benefit if there's faster growth in the countries.
On the sidelines of this G20 meeting, I caught up with Brazil's ambassador to India, Andre Arana Correa de Lago, and I asked him about Brazil's priorities, also how the Ukraine war will impact discussions at the G20 meeting in Bengaluru, and the issue of climate finance. Listen in.
Climate finance has already been extremely debated and agreed under the Convention on Climate Change. So there is a line that has already been approved. Now what we need is really to implement what we know are the necessities of the world. So naturally, everywhere the ministers of finance are key for being able to make sure the resources that will fight climate change will be available. So it is natural that in a discussion like that, this issue can be raised and we hope advance significantly.
That's all the action from the G20 summit in Bangalore. Now, the export curbs and wheat policy will not be relaxed until the government completes procurement operations. That's the word from A.K. Meena, chairman at the Food Corporation of India. He spoke to CNBC-TV18's Abhimanyu Sharma and expressed confidence about wheat procurement this year. Take a look.
In the OMS's sale, out of the 18 lakh metric ton already sold, 11 lakh metric ton has been lifted till now, and we expect a good procurement to take place next year. See, I would like to state clearly that FCI cannot comment on the export policy, but our understanding is that we will meet the requirement of our country first, and therefore there is no question of allowing any relaxation in the export policy relating to wheat at all till we complete our procurement operations. Procurement operations generally will take place in April and May.
The Bombay High Court has quashed the enforcement case information report against Jet Airways founder Naresh Goyal and his wife Anita in a money laundering case that was registered in February 2020. The High Court said the report was illegal and it's contrary to the law. Amid ongoing layoffs in tech companies, e-commerce giant Flipkart has decided not to hand out increments to about 30% of its employees in the current cycle. This move will impact 4,500 of its senior staff. In an email sent to its employees, the company said that it will now prioritize employees at grade 9 and below. However, bonus payouts and stock option allotment are on track as planned. In a bid to cut costs, Google's parent company Alphabet has announced that it will cut 240 jobs from its operations in Ireland. That's not all. Google is also asking its cloud employees and partners to share desks starting next quarter. The new desk sharing model will apply to Google Cloud's 5 largest US locations. On that note, it is time for us to head into a short break. But coming up next, reports of shelling in southern Donetsk in Ukraine ahead of the one-year anniversary of the Russia invasion. Details when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still with us on India Business Hour. Now, India's internet companies like Zomato, Nykaa and Byju's, among others, are emerging from a difficult 2022 as stocks took a beating and funding started to dry up. But the road ahead looks bright thanks to massive headroom for growth. Shireen Bhan is here with the Unicorn Health Check. Shireen?
over $80 billion have been invested in 102 unicorns with a combined valuation of over $350 billion, many of which are valued at 10 times their global peers. However, most unicorns spend between ₹1.50 to ₹2 to earn a single rupee of revenue, prioritizing growth over profit for now. But what is the big prize that India's billion-dollar startups are going after? Let me show you. Now, India has the world's second largest internet user base with about 780 million users today. That's twice as many as the US. And by 2030, it's estimated that India is expected to surpass China and have the most internet users globally with over 1 billion users. Now, can you imagine India's digital bazaar by 2030? Over 1 billion Indians spending an estimated average 7 hours on the internet every single day. That's 2 hours more than the Chinese, and that's the India consumer story that unicorns are supposedly going after. However, let's take a look at where the market stands as of today. The overall consumer market is about $1 trillion, serving a population of 1.4 billion people. Now, this is the business that most B2C unicorns consider. However, and here's a closer look at the numbers that are available with us, the market is much smaller and the obtainable market is even more so. The same applies to B2B unicorns going after 65 million MSMEs. The reality is less than 1 million of these small businesses are active or repeat customers. Now, while the opportunity is immense, the valuations for the most part seem far removed from reality. And that brings us to the reality of the actual users. As of 2022, 500 million Indians are not active transactors, meaning they do not engage in online transactions. Only about 300 to 325 million people actually transact online, but these users tend to be opportunistic with low loyalty. The more mature users who are frequent online shoppers and spend about half of their wallet online are only about 40 to 45 million. It is projected that this number could increase to 150 million by 2030. But even then, it would still be less than 20% of the real market. So let's pause here to ask the question, how deep and wide is India's digital bazaar? Let me show you what our unicorns are actually catering to, and let's start with Zomato. Of India's 40 to 45 million frequent internet users, just about 17 million make up Zomato's monthly active users. Let's switch to Nykaa, company that's targeting 180 to 190 million online shopper base. It gets regular orders from just about 24 million active buyers. This gives us a sense of the real market versus the opportunity. Now let's talk about Byju's. It has the largest group of school-going kids in the world as its target market, 350 million. So while it's impressively registered half of that population, guess how many are actually paying customers? Only 7.5 million pay any money at all to Byju's. For Cars24, which operates in India's fragmented used car market that sold 4.4 million cars, in FY22, Cars24 had less than 1% share. The scope of the market is also visible when we look at the Indian stock market. Now, in a nation of 140 crore people, just about 8 to 9 crore hold a demat account. And India's top broker, Zerodha, has a usership of 1 crore. The picture's not very different from the enterprise side either. Of the 65 million micro, small and medium businesses in India, off-businesses client base stands at about 0.7 million. Which brings me to the big question that we are asking. Are founders and investors overestimating growth prospects and the target market size? How long will it take for startup revenues to start justifying the valuations that they command? And finally, will the next set of startup IPOs get real?
So that's a health check on some of the unicorns in India. Thank you so much for those details, Shireen. Now, in national headlines, a Delhi court has granted an interim bail to Congress spokesperson Pawan Khera after a direction from Supreme Court for a bond of 30,000 rupees. Khera was deplaned at Delhi airport and arrested for his tweet against Prime Minister Modi. FIRs have been filed against him in Assam, Lucknow and Varanasi. The Apex Court also issued notices to Assam and UP police to club all of the FIRs.
बिना एफआईआर की कॉपी दिए, बिना मुझे कोई नोटिस दिए, हवाई जहाज से उतारकर इस तरह से गैरकानूनी रूप से मुझे गिरफ्तार किया गया असम पुलिस द्वारा। न्याय प्रणाली पर मुझे पूरा भरोसा और आस्था है, जिसकी वजह से आज मेरी स्वतंत्रता की रक्षा हुई है।
Meanwhile, reports of shelling in southern Donetsk in Ukraine ahead of the Russian invasion hitting the 2-year mark. Ukraine claimed to have repelled 90 Russian attacks in the northeast and east over the past 24 hours. Moldova was dismissed Moscow's accusation that Ukraine is planning to invade the breakaway region of Transnistria. Reports suggest that Russia could launch a major offensive ahead of the anniversary of the 24th of February. Sanjay Suri reports from Kyiv.
There's absolutely nothing you could do in the face of an incoming missile, but what choice do people have but to carry on, take what precautions they can, and hold on to faith in a better future and to times of peace. The continuing attacks and the evidence of destruction all around has done nothing to stop some Ukrainians returning home.
I just came from Czech Republic, and 1 week ago I came back home, and I don't feel that people are scared. People just used to feel that we live in a war. So, unfortunately, people just used to. And I guess just people are tired to be scared.
But nobody's unaware of all the deaths and of the ever-present danger.
It's very nervous because you never know where the bomb could be shut it down or when it could be rocket launch. Everybody knows where to go to the shelter and how to proceed in the shelter. You need to have some additional clothes because you never know how long you can stay there.
And here we have an air raid alert yet again. And people still not panicking. People have gotten used to this air raid alarm over the space of a year. And that has not stopped people from going about their lives as if nothing has happened. And here, nobody quite rushing in, nobody diving into a shelter. He says we cannot live in fear day and night. We cannot spend our lives diving into shelters. The government advice is that complacency and overconfidence can be your biggest enemy at moments like this, but people really don't care. They've just seen too much of this kind of thing for too long to keep diving into cover every time an air raid alarm sounds.
And that's the latest from Ukraine. Now, Israel bombed the Gaza Strip after Palestinian fighters launched several rockets that killed at least 11 people in the West Bank of Nablus. In a statement, the Israel Defense Forces said that the fighter jet struck a weapons manufacturing site in central Gaza, which was owned by the Hamas. And before we wrap, EY is honoring the best business leaders at their annual Entrepreneur of the Year award event. We spoke to several industry leaders on the sidelines. Sajan Jindal, the chairman of JSW Group, was positive about the steel sector. He said he was not bothered about China dumping steel into India. Deepak Bagla of Invest India was upbeat about the India story.
China is, of course, China has this tendency that they tend to dump steel or dump their products into a country and kill their domestic industry, and then after that they tend to increase their prices. This is their traditional style of doing business. Our government is very, very proactive, and they ensure that whenever these kind of things happen, then they are very quick to implement some sort of restriction, some sort of anti-dumping. So therefore, I'm not concerned about China dumping steel into India.
I think when the Honorable Prime Minister spoke about Amrit Kal, this is that time. The next 9,000 days, and let me give you a little math on that one. 15th August 2047, that's when you turn 100. We'll have an estimated nominal GDP of anywhere between 32 to 35 trillion. That means 90% of India of 15th August 2047 is yet to be made. And that $30 trillion will join the bottom line of each and every partner with us who has joined hands in this journey.
And with that, it is a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. More news continues right here on CNBC-TV18.